It's been 1 week since Junwan had told Min Jae to stop searching for alibi information on Han Doyoung and instead focus on his childhood. Detective Min Jae had barely slept ever since, consumed by the investigation into Han Doyoung's past. Something about Han Doyoung's taunting words to Junwan had struck a deep nerve. Junwan had relayed the information to him 1 week ago. "We'll definitely meet again, right after you've uncovered my childhood." That phrase had been playing on a loop in Min Jae's mind ever since, pushing him to dig deeper. So he began retracing the official records. He started from the very beginning, the moment the Han family found their missing son, Han Doyoung. The company in charge of finding Han Doyoung, who had gone missing at the age of 10, had eventually located him. A DNA test was conducted. His voice was even tested. Everything pointed to him being the Han family's missing son. The Han family had found him after searching for 10 years. At first, everything seemed in place. Han Doyoung had adapted to life with the Han family. But to Min Jae, he finally realized it was too perfect actually. Then the information he uncovered made him notice something strange. According to the records, Han Doyoung had been visiting a clinic from the ages of 20 to 25. Each time, he followed the same routine. First the plastic surgery department, then the phonosurgery department, followed by the speech therapy and training department, and finally the psychology department. But when Min Jae cross-checked those visits, he noticed a pattern. These trips to the private hospital only happened when his mother and sister were out of the country, which occurred every 3 months over those 5 years. Anytime they left, Han Doyoung was the only one who stayed behind. And then he found it. He finally discovered a clue that led him to the very first clinic Han Doyoung had visited when he turned 18. Min Jae followed the address he had uncovered. A clinic located on the outskirts of the city, no longer licensed by the medical board, but still operating. When the detective first walked in, the clinic smelled of antiseptic. Charts still hung from clipboards. Min Jae had arrived earlier that morning, asking for Dr. Kim Hanol, a plastic surgeon known for taking on discreet, off-the-record procedures, especially for people who wanted to disappear or become someone else. Now, the man in his early 60s sat across from the detective, nervously tapping his knee. "I already told you," Dr. Kim said, his voice tight. "I don't recall every face. It's been years." Min Jae didn't flinch. He slid an old photo across the table, one of the man the world now knew as Han Doyoung. "Then maybe this will refresh your memory." Still, Dr. Kim hesitated, until Min Jae calmly revealed his badge and leaned in, his quiet presence a warning. Dr. Kim's eyes flickered. Denial hovered on his lips, but then, he sighed long and tired. "That's not his original face," he admitted. "That's the face I gave him, based on what he wanted to look like." Min Jae leaned forward, his tone even. "Go on." Dr. Kim hesitated. Then the words spilled out like a long-buried confession. "About 10 years ago, a young man came to me with a large sum of money. I asked him where he got it, but he wouldn't answer. I told him he needed parental consent for surgery that intense, but he pulled a gun on me." He paused. Min Jae gave a small nod. "Continue." "The next day, he came back, with the dead body of Han Doyoung," Dr. Kim whispered. "I recognized him. I remembered the posters when he went missing at 10. I knew what this man was trying to do." His voice shook slightly. "But I didn't report it. The money was too much, and I convinced myself it wasn't my business. So I didn't ask questions." He looked down at his hands, shame lingering in the silence. "We had the real Han Doyoung's body. We did scans, bone structure analysis, and rebuilt the man who came to me into him. He was around 18 then. After the surgery, he returned for checkups over 2 years. Then he disappeared. I hadn't seen him again until now." Min Jae's throat tightened. "Do you have any records of the surgery?" "I kept the scans," Dr. Kim said softly. "I knew someday someone might come looking." He stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a locked metal box. From inside, he retrieved an envelope and handed it to Min Jae. Inside were 2 photos, one of the real Han Doyoung at 18, and the other, a scan of the imposter, the man Junwan had confronted just days ago. They weren't the same man. Min Jae stared at the second photo, the original face of the imposter, and froze. His breath caught, because the man who had taken Han Doyoung's identity looked exactly like a younger version of Baek Junwan's father. Same intense eyes. Same sharp jawline. Even the subtle furrow in the brow. 2 questions hammered in Min Jae's mind. Why did the fake Han Doyoung kill the real one? And what drove him to do it? As for the first question, The answer was clear. He wanted his identity. But the second one still remained as a haunting mystery. Min Jae turned to Dr. Kim, who now sat wringing his hands nervously. You do know what you did was wrong, right? Dr. Kim nodded quickly. Yes, I know. But my family was threatened that night. I had no choice. I swear, since then, I've never taken another case like that again. Min Jae looked around the dim, dusty clinic, then back at the aging surgeon. You're operating illegally. Either shut this place down, or get it licensed under the medical board. Dr. Kim nodded frantically. I promise. I'll register it. I'll fix everything. Min Jae said nothing more. He simply tucked the envelope into his coat and stepped out into the morning light, his chest heavy with the weight of the truth. The sky was overcast, casting a dull gray light into the tall windows of Baek Junwon's sleek, quiet office. Papers were stacked neatly on the edge of his desk, untouched since the call. He stood by the window, arms crossed, his gaze distant. Then a knock. Come in, he said without turning. Detective Min Jae entered, his expression unreadable. In his hand was an envelope. He didn't waste a second. He stepped forward, opened the envelope, and laid out 2 photographs on Junwon's desk. Junwon approached slowly. His eyes fell on the images. One was a scan of the real Han Doyoung, dead at 18. The other was the original face of the man who had just put Rose in a coma. Junwon's stomach dropped, because the face staring up at him in the second photo looked exactly like his father. Same cold eyes. Same jawline. Same cruel mouth. He looked up at Min Jae, his voice low. He's my brother. Min Jae nodded. Half-brother, most likely. The bloodline's undeniable. That's why he called you little brother. He wasn't just mocking you. He meant it. Silence gripped the room. Then Min Jae continued, steady and quiet. Dr. Kim confirmed everything. Your so-called Han Doyoung came to him with the corpse of the real one. Paid him off. Threatened him. Had him reconstruct his face, right down to the bone. Used the dead boy's DNA to fool the system. The world welcomed him back without question. Junwon's fists tightened at his sides. Min Jae folded his arms. There's one last thing I still don't understand. And I'm going to find out. Junwon met his eyes tense. Min Jae said, What pushed your brother to do this? Junwon didn't answer, but the storm in his eyes said enough. Min Jae reached into his coat, took out his phone and tapped on it. I just sent you the full recording of my conversation with Dr. Kim. Your secretary's investigation into Doyoung's alibi came in too. Turns out the man in Singapore wasn't Doyoung at all. It was a double. He was in Korea the night your wife was murdered. Junwon gave a slow nod. Min Jae stepped back. Once I find out his motive, we'll reopen the case and bring your brother to justice. He gave Junwon a small nod, then turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. Junwon stood there for a long moment, staring down at the photos again. Then he reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in months. The line rang once, twice, then a familiar voice answered, dry and distant. Hello. Mr. Baek, Junwon said. A pause. Then his father's cold voice replied. Not even Dad? Just Baek? Junwon, no matter what, I'm still your father. Junwon said nothing to that. His voice stayed cold, steady. When are you and Mom coming back to Korea? In about 1 week, his father replied. Why? Junwon's eyes dropped back to the photo, the boy with his father's face. I'll let you know when you get here, he said. And he hung up. For a long time after, Junwon stood at the window, the photos still on his desk, and only one question echoing in his mind. What did his father do all those years ago to push this fake Han Doyoung down this path? 1 week later, Detective Min Jae stood in front of a quiet, well-aged neighborhood in one of the cities. The houses here whispered of past prestige, large balconies, iron-wrought gates, and carefully maintained gardens that clung to their former glory. It was clear the place had once been elite, but now the upper class had long moved out, and the quiet rhythm of middle-class life had taken over. Min Jae walked along the paved walkway, holding a faded photo of a young boy, the real face of the man now known as Han Doyoung. For hours, he asked around, showing the picture to anyone who paused long enough to talk. Most shook their heads. Time had blurred memories. But just as he was starting to lose hope, he approached an elderly woman watering her potted plants on a balcony. She had kind eyes, silver hair in a neat bun, and a soft but sharp presence. She wore a light gray sweater and long skirt, and the air around her was warm with familiarity. Excuse me, ma'am, Min Jae said politely. I'm looking for anyone who might recognize this boy. He used to live around here, maybe 2 decades ago. He showed her the photo. The woman froze, her gaze sharpened on the image. I know him, she said slowly. That's Jihun. Baek Jihun. Min Jae's pulse quickened. You're sure? Of course I'm sure, she said. I watched that boy grow up. Sweet child. He was smart and quiet, always holding his mother's hand. She paused, her voice softening. His mother was Yunha. Yunha? Min Jae asked, pulling out his notepad. Do you remember her full name? Shim Yunha. She was a strong woman, always smiling, even when she was falling apart inside. Madame Haisuk then gestured to the house across the street. They had lived right there. Min Jae followed her gaze to a tall, white building with ivy crawling over the fence. So Jihun was her son? Min Jae asked. Yes, she said, nodding. She was married to a man named Baek Seongmin. Back then, he wasn't anyone special. He was just an employee at her father's company. A regular office man. But Yunha, she had money. Her family owned that company. How did they end up together? She fell in love with him, Madame Haisuk said with a dry smile. Can you believe it? The heiress and the office clerk. It was like a drama. Her parents didn't approve at first, but she was stubborn. She fought hard for him, and so they gave in. They trusted Seongmin after the wedding, trusted him too much. What happened after? Jihun was born within a year. Then, out of nowhere, Seongmin started climbing in the company. From employee to manager, then higher. By the third year, tragedy struck. Yunha's parents died in a car crash. Min Jae frowned. Let me guess, they left the company to him. Exactly, she nodded bitterly. They gave the company to Seongmin, thinking since he is married to their daughter, he'd protect her and his son. But it was all a lie. Once he got control of the company, everything changed. Min Jae leaned forward. What do you mean? Madame Haisuk's expression darkened. When Jihun turned 5, Seongmin divorced Yunha. Just like that. He cut all ties with her and his son, and he even took her shares in the company. She fought it in court, tried to claim the shares that was hers, but she lost. She had to pay him compensation on top of it. Can you imagine? Min Jae blinked. He stripped her of everything. He made sure she couldn't find a job in the city again. Blacklisted her. Crushed her. I remember watching her pack up the house with Jihun. They sold it because they couldn't afford to live here anymore. Min Jae reached into his coat and pulled out another small photo, one of Baek Seongmin, taken from a corporate archive. Do you recognize this man? He asked. She took one glance at it, and her lips thinned with fury. Yes, that's him. That bastard, she spat. Ungrateful doesn't even begin to describe him. If there's one man I regret ever being polite to, it's Baek Seongmin. And Jihun? Min Jae asked quietly. That little boy, he was always trying to be brave for her. But you could see it. He was just a child. Her voice cracked slightly. I thought the last time I would see them was when they were moving out. Yunha had looked like a ghost. She was pale, thin, and sickly. Rumor was Seongmin had remarried just a year after the divorce, but no one knew which family he married into. Min Jae's brow twitched. Did Seongmin ever reach out to them again? No. The final time I ever saw Jihun was at Yunha's funeral. When I heard about Yunha's death, it broke me. Jihun was 10. He had stood by the grave, holding back his tears and trying to look strong. His father didn't come. He did not even send a wreath. Nothing. Madame Haisuk looked away for a moment, eyes misty. That poor woman. Marrying Baek Seongmin was the beginning of her downfall. I just hope her son, wherever he is, I hope he found peace. Min Jae was silent for a long moment. Then he asked gently, Do you know where Jihun went after the funeral? Any clue where Jihun might have grown up? Madame Haisuk shook her head. No. He cut ties with everyone here. Disappeared. I heard he worked small jobs in rural places to survive. But that's all I know. Min Jae gave a small bow. Thank you. You've helped more than you know. As he walked away from the garden-lined street, a storm brewed in his thoughts. Baek Jihun Naohan Doyoung. A child left behind. A son discarded. And now he is a man out for blood. Min Jae, with those thoughts whirring through his head like a broken tape reel, sat in his car for a few minutes, staring out the windshield. The story he had just uncovered painted a new, painful portrait of Han Doyoung. A boy abandoned. A mother destroyed. A family legacy twisted beyond recognition. He gripped the steering wheel, exhaled slowly, then drove straight to Baek Junwon's company. In Junwon's office, the air felt heavier than usual. The same sleek lines, the same still gray skyline beyond the windows. But everything inside was tense, waiting. Junwon sat behind his desk, brows furrowed. Min Jae stood before him, delivering everything Madame Haisuk had told him. From Jihun's early life to his mother's ruin. From Seongmin's betrayal to Jihun's disappearance. from funeral silence to the child left behind. When Min Jae finally finished speaking, silence lingered in the room like a fog. Junwan's jaw tightened, his fists clenched loosely on his thighs. This was his father. A man who had destroyed a family that had once made him who he was. A man who had swiftly abandoned a family he once claimed, after getting what he wanted. And now, a chilling question gripped Junwan's mind. Would he do the same thing to my mother and her family, once he's gotten what he wants? Junwan exhaled slowly, finally breaking the silence. My father, he murmured. He's returning today. With my mother. Min Jae looked up. Then I guess we hear it from the horse's own mouth. Junwan nodded slowly. This evening. At home. He will answer for everything. Just then, Junwan's phone buzzed. It was his secretary. Yes, he answered. Sir, the voice said quickly. I followed the digital guest log and house security entries from the night your wife died. You asked me to dig deeper. Well, I found something. There was someone else present at the house that night. Junwan straightened. Who? A chef, the secretary replied. One of the contracted caterers for the private dinner that evening. He stayed back longer than the others, which is why he wasn't listed in the initial exit report. And, he hesitated. I think he might have seen it. I think he saw Han Doyoung kill your wife. It wasn't just Sangwoo. Min Jae's eyes widened. Junwan's heartbeat surged. Where is he now? Junwan asked, already reaching for his jacket. I tracked him down through staff records. He moved out of the city and runs a small food stall now. I'm heading there now. I'll send you the coordinates. Do it, Junwan said firmly. He ended the call and turned to Min Jae. Let's go. Min Jae nodded. This might be the witness we need to reopen the case, officially. Without another word, the two men left the office, while Junwan and Min Jae sped toward the location of the chef. Elsewhere, in a penthouse draped in heavy shadows and silence, Han Doyoung stood still by the window. His phone had just gone silent. The news had reached him. Baek Junwan now knew the truth. Not just about the surgery. Not just about the stolen identity. But the real name. The abandoned childhood. The mother who died alone. The legacy he was never meant to reclaim. And worse, Junwan and the detective were now on their way to the one man who had seen it all. The chef. The one thread left to unravel everything. Behind Han Doyoung, two of his most trusted men stood near the door, nervous and watching. One of them, sharp-jawed and grim, spoke first. Sir, should we take care of it? We can get to the chef. Destroy whatever he has. If they get to him. No, Han Doyoung said flatly without turning. They froze. Then he turned around slowly, face cold, unreadable. I said no. The other man, younger, took a step forward, hesitant. But, if he testifies, you'll go to jail. I will go to jail, Han Doyoung replied, calm and resolute. I killed the real Han Doyoung. I killed his sister too. It wasn't time for my revenge to begin, but she found out. So I silenced her. His eyes didn't waver. I've made up my mind, he added. I'll pay for what I did. The room was silent. No one dared speak. Han Doyoung crossed the room, picked up a gun from a chair. Not like a man in a hurry, but like a man preparing for war. Not with guns or fists, but with ghosts. But before going to jail, he continued, his voice low and steely, there's one last thing I must finish. Someone I cannot allow to keep breathing. His men exchanged glances. He met their eyes. I'll be waiting for Baek Seongmin and his wife, at their home, he said. That's where it ends. That's where everything ends. His voice held no fear. Because for Han Doyoung, no Baek Jahun, the justice he needed wasn't the one the courts could hand down. It was the one that could only be delivered by his own hand. To the man who abandoned his mother when she was weakest. To the man who stole everything and discarded them like trash. To the man who watched them suffer while building a brand new life with a new woman and a new son. Baek Junwan. Han Doyoung walked past his men without another word and stepped into the elevator. This time, he wasn't running from the past. He was walking into it, with fire in his lungs and blood on his mind. This time, he would send that bastard of a father to the afterlife.